So today we planted potatoes. It was muddy, but it was great. So we're still not gonna um, go to market for a little bit. We're gonna do a market at Polaris School. That's gonna be June, the Saturday, the first Saturday in June. So we'll probably be there with some asparagus and something. Who knows what else? So that's going to be, I should turn that off. That's going to be June 2nd. Other than that, we'll probably see you at Main Street starting sometime in July, I think, when we'll have some more peas. So we're busy doing stuff, right? But the pace is the pace, right? That's how we do it. So I'm just gonna play. But I enjoyed talking a little bit last week, so these days I might end up talking just a little bit more, if that's okay. I'm not sure where I'm gonna start. This video is just us planting potatoes. It was muddy, so we had to choose a few different methods to do it. And I'm just gonna start playing and stop talking at the moment. Although I did want to say something about narratives. A lot of energy we can put out a lot of energy trying to convince people or get people to think something or get people to act or get people to do stuff. Not so much manipulation, but just trying to communicate and have people see something maybe in the same way that we see it. Which is difficult, and it's hindered by this thing called narratives, which is the story that how people interpret stories being told to them. So narratives tend to oftentimes interfere with with reality. So that's kind of where my head is at the moment in trying to figure out how to deal with narratives. Um, there's a really interesting article, I guess you could call it a whistleblowing article, about the some of the senior leadership at CBC and how they're kind of hindering certain conversations and discussions um, related to Palestine. But narratives are really important. It's how we organize our world. Narratives. Yeah. So that's where my thinking is this time. So we'll see. I decided to tell you where I'm at before it started, and I think I'm gonna start. Okay. Arigatou gozaimasu. Let's see where we're at. Plus, I did my first open mic. Well, my first open mic. I did an open mic in Osgood at this place called No Go Cafe. I've been drinking that coffee for a while. She's a local coffee roasting business. It was very nice. The cafe is good. It used to be the old grocery store, which I remember from before I started school. When we moved out here, I was 2, and the others were 5 and 8. So they were in school. So I more remember the grocery store than they do, because we used to go during the day while they were at school. We meaning myself and my mother. So I have some memories of that place. Um, Most of my memories, though, of the village aren't that great. Um, Whatever. But it was interesting to go back inside. It's completely different, of course. The outside is the same, but it was a good experience, to be honest. I met a few other musicians, and I got to do some stuff. They didn't have a piano set up, so it was just I had one drum I was using, and I kind of did not a cappella, but only with drum. But it was very nice, so I'm probably going to do it again. And then one day we'll do a full thing, and I'll invite you all to come watch. So, but that's enough talking for now. But I just wanted to say, though, that I did the open mic, signed up for it, did 3 pieces, talked about dignity, talked about giving each other wings so that we can fly, so that all we face will demagnify and get smaller. And then also I talked about seeds. These are some songs. And I talked about seeds, planting seeds, and just not worrying if they don't come right away, because sometimes it takes a while for stuff to germinate. Those are the kind of seeds that you plant in people's hearts and in people's minds and stuff. Those kind of seeds. Back to normal, or a seed in germination. After the seed is planted, comes the time for celebration. And if after 1 or 2 days there is still no sign of life, there is no hurry, no worry, and no feeling of strife. Weeks may go by before the young maize breaks ground. Meanwhile, it would seem certain disaster abound, as all efforts are aimed at the seed's destruction. The day after reasoning, and as a seed is planted in praise of Jah, that same seed receives Jah's blessings. Back to normal, no, this is just the beginning, for through our reasoning our labor, some sorrow, joy, and pain. The eternal cycle of life is set into motion. Once again, for weeks may go by before the young maize breaks ground. Meanwhile, it would seem certain disaster abound, as all efforts are aimed at the seed's destruction. The day after reasoning, weeks may go by before the young maize breaks ground. Meanwhile, it would seem certain disaster abound, as all efforts are aimed at the seed's destruction. The day after reasoning, the day after reasoning, the day after reasoning. Okay, I know it's been said before, right? So it's not a new thing. It's not a new thing, but so we were in London a couple weeks ago, um, visiting. So we have a friend who lives in Oneida Territory. So we went, and it's important to remember, that 2 hours outside of Toronto, 10, 15 minutes outside of London, and we cannot drink the water, right? So here, this is a cup of coffee. I drink coffee. So that's a cup of coffee made from water that we take from the well and we boil it, and then I add it to the French press thing. hmm And then we get nice coffee. Well, because the coffee is nice, right? In that sense. Um, yeah, but to make coffee over there, you need bottled water, right? They're not bottling the water themselves. Water is not bottled inside the community, so it's brought in, and then that's what we have to use to make coffee, for instance. So it's just a nice reminder, an important reminder that it's still like that here in a few places. That's not the only one. Um, so we kind of have to think. Just th- thinking needs to shift, right? This narrative thing I've been thinking about all week. Thinking has to shift in terms of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, what makes sense and what doesn't make sense, right? Because it's the narrative that determines what makes sense or what doesn't make sense. So that's just something to say again about narratives, but it's like that. So let's see. But one thing I noticed, right, that I got in a mail. Now, to be the truth be told, is I haven't checked everything completely, and I don't know if I'm supposed to check everything completely. But anyways, you can imagine, right? So there's so that mostly the students, right, who are, but I can't say only, but mostly the students calling for disclosure, divestment, and the third one, which I can't remember, academic, not divestment, but severing. You know, it's what does it mean, right? What does it mean? Who can count to a billion? Who can count to a billion? Who? Do you have time to count to a billion? Even if you do it by 10, can you count to a billion? But the point is it's billions. Um, and you know, my cousin Jelani, who was helping me plant potatoes, you know, we were just talking today. I think it was with him, but it's just it's the billions, right? Um, billions, military and defense, right? Nothing else makes that much money. Nothing else makes that much money, but the destruction of people and people's lives. Nothing else makes that much money except for the destruction of people and people's lives, right? Celebrity, the destruction of people and people's lives. It's like, okay, that's okay. Okay. But just because I have to mention it, you know, it's billions, right? So, you know, I can understand the resistance, but maybe we should just kind of like shift the thinking, kind of take control of something so that then, you know, if you need lots of money to be made, then at least, you know, place value on life-giving harmonic stuff. You know what I mean? Why the devil has to be so rich in that sense? Really, devil didn't make anything. Okay, sorry about that. And a final word on narrative. Sorry, I'm going to run over a little bit, but a final word on narratives is a favorite poem I have that I did in 1991 or 1992 in Harare, Zimbabwe, because that's where I wrote the poem. The poem, it was the first time I saw Ministry of Education and Culture, which I thought was great. Um, so this is the final word. I don't even know if I don't even have any music to play with this, but that's okay. We'll just do it. So it's education and culture, um, and it's apt, whatever. And it's a poem, and it's written, and it's supposed to suit the moment and the circumstance. So here we go. And plus, I have the vibe to give it. So, education and culture, right? The aftermath of colonialism shows us how the one in a one track mind fits into the equation of life. It allows us to see that a one track mind, a small mind with little room to flex, cannot conceive of a broad education. And an education that narrows a mind begets a similar lifestyle. A lifestyle which will distort what the eye sees in an effort to soothe the mind, while all kinds of dead inconsumables serve to kill the yearnings of the soul. A one-track mind is not aware of the other paths open to it, so when these paths cross with traffic and transit, the one-track mind is startled and bewildered by that which it cannot see, and thus that which it doesn't know. This startle forces a flex, a widening of vision, but only so wide as to see and to bring on track those blind ones who can't seem to follow the road. And in spite of, or rather as a result of its sense of self-importance, the one-track mind is forever fearful that it is lost and tries to force comfort through numbers. A one-track mind will see a three-dimensional sculpture from one side only and will miss the full beauty and the full purpose of the work. And an education that narrows a mind begets a similar lifestyle. Narratives are really important. Um, if you can affect how people think, if you can affect kind of how people feel, you can affect how they act, their behavior. Narratives are so very important. Narratives. So thank you very much. That was this week, and we'll continue. I mean, we're getting busier here on the farm, so sometimes I might be a little bit late. Sometimes I might be all over the place because we just finished doing something. We planted 14 rows of potato or 13 rows of potatoes today, kind of long rows, so that was nice. But still, we're going to play music. We'll do it for as much as we can during the whole summer. So I appreciate you all being here, and I'm going to sign off now. It's usually less talking, but just I was in a mood today. So thank you, and have a wonderful week.